love lives here.
Now I am. Good morning. According to authors Frederick and Marianne Broussard, spiritual insight into animals starts with one important understanding. Animals are our teachers. Through our encounters with them, we learn about spirit, about ways to exist together on earth. In countless stories, myths, and dreams, animals are wise elders, imparting wisdom about the world and hinting at the great mysteries of life. Some people minimize the value of entering into relationships with animals, regarding them as inferior beings put on earth merely to serve humans as food, tools, entertainment, and transportation. But to be spiritually awakened means to recognize that animals are much more than what animals can do with them. The word animal actually comes from the Latin animalis, having a soul, and is closely linked to the noun animus, or breath. Anyone who has lived with animals on a day-to-day basis knows intuitively that they do indeed have souls, that spiritual essence that is considered immortal, and that they are marvelous mentors. They are curious about the world around them and very much alive to the report of their senses. They have a full repertoire of emotions, including joy, disappointment, guilt, fear, anger, contentment, embarrassment, gratitude, and grief. They evidence loyalty, and they certainly care for their families. Sometimes they even display an altruism and empathy that touches the heart. In fact, science is discovering that many animals have rich moral lives, and that what's best about our human nature might just be our animal nature. If you thought only humans were capable of virtuous behavior, think again. Author Belinda Recio shares a collection of several true stories in her book, When Animals Rescue, which shows the depth and breadth of non-human kindness. Throughout the book, Recio weaves fascinating facts and astonishing stories about all kinds of animals, large and small, domesticated and wild, acting in compassionate ways. This book reminded me of two other stories I've read. One is by author Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, titled A Friend in Need. And her story is about a dog named Ruby who helped another dog, Wicket, cross a partly frozen stream. Wicket was afraid to cross on her own, and Ruby, who had already crossed the stream, went back to get Wicket, greeted her, and after about 10 unsuccessful attempts, convinced Wicket to follow her across the ice. Another touching example involved wild elephants in the Samburu National Reserve in northern Kenya. There was a teenage female, Babel, who walked very slowly and with difficulty taking each step. She'd been crippled for years, but the other members of her herd never left her behind. They'd walk a mile, then stop and look around to see where she was. If Babel lagged, someone would wait for her. If she had been left alone, she could have been prey to a lion or other predator. Sometimes the matriarch would even feed Babel. Babel's friends had nothing to gain by helping her. She could do nothing for them. Nonetheless, they adjusted their behavior to allow Babel to remain with the group. One of the things I love most about New Thought's teachings is how we believe that everything is an expression of God. Therefore, when we open ourselves to the love and appreciation to the many forms of creation that surround us, we are opening ourselves to be blessed by them. Here's a quote by Anatole France that I love. Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. Those of us who have shared our lives with an animal companion know this quote is absolutely true. Loving an animal truly does awaken one's soul, and we are awakening to their gifts and their lessons. I agree with writer Robin A. Davidson, who wrote, God's ways of speaking to us are not unlike listening to the radio or watching television. There are lots of stations with vastly different types of programming, all broadcasting at the same time. Different people are drawn to different things and will tune in to whatever resonates with them at the time. How good it is to know that God's speaking to us right where we are and through whatever we're being attracted to. For me, and perhaps for you as well, one of those ways has been my relationship with animals. I had only one sibling, and he was 8 years older than me. So rather than connecting with him, I had strong connections with the animals in our home, 3 cats and a dog. Over the years, through very difficult times, I have been blessed with amazing and wise animal companions. They have been my teachers, my guides, my mentors. From them, I learned much about unconditional love, patience, devotion, and even death. Even as a youngster, as I looked into the eyes of my dog, I could sense the truth that was beyond words. And as I grew in wisdom and grace, I came to understand that with my animals, whoever was accompanying me at the time, I was always connecting with God at a deep level. I imagine most, if not all of you, have had similar experiences and know exactly what I mean. One of my favorite depictions of this type of connection is found in the book Kinship with All Life by J. Allen Boone. Even spiritual author Joel S. Goldsmith, some of whose works you may have read, said of the book, thinking people for generations to come will benefit by this book. Written in the mid-50s, Boone tells the story of how he discovered that there's a special connection between humans and animals. Agreeing to dog sit Stronghart, a highly trained German Shepherd war dog turned animal actor, Boone was given a list of instructions for the dog's care. The instructions included treat him like an intelligent human being and read something worthwhile to him every day. In the weeks that followed, Boone had one experience after another with Stronghart, each convincing him further that the two of them were communicating on a level he had never experienced before. Boone wrote, I began moving out beyond the restricting and unreal boundaries of our respective species. We found ourselves operating in the boundless realm of the mental and the spiritual, where each of us could function fully and freely as an individual state of consciousness, and together as fellow states of mind in an adventure that seemed to have no frontiers whatsoever. Elsewhere in the book, Boone talks about his conversation with some ants when he asked them to leave the inside of his home, and they did, and his relationship with a common housefly. I recommend this book. It's Kinship with All Life by J. Allen Boone, and there's a copy of it on the table back there if you want to look at it. Another newer book, and perhaps even more intriguing, examples of connecting with non-human animals is found in Cy Montgomery's 2015 book, The Soul of an Octopus, which is also on the table. I highly recommend this one as well. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. In it, Cy writes of her relationships with several octopuses, and yes, it's octopuses, not octopi, because it comes from the Greek, not the Latin, and I would know because I had 2 years of Latin. Thanks to Catholic school. Yes, so could anything be more extraterrestrial than an octopus? Octopuses have 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood because theirs is copper-based, unlike our iron-based vital fluid. Montgomery recounts visiting a dying octopus, Octavia, who she had known for years at the New England Aquarium in Boston. Octavia had recently been moved to a barrel-like container, but other than that, no one had had contact with the octopus for several months because previously she had been in her aquarium den guarding her infertile eggs. Montgomery is accompanied by aquarium employee Wilson Menashe and volunteer Krista Carceo. She wrote, Octavia rose a few more inches in the water, and hundreds of her suckers broke the surface. She gently grasped the back of Wilson's hand, first with just a few suckers, then with more. And then, slowly but deliberately, she extended one arm out of the water, curling it over his hand, his wrist, and next, her neighboring arm followed, rising and unfurling like a wine-dark wave, her suckers attaching to his hand, his wrist, his forearm. She knows you, cried Krista. She remembers you, Wilson. And yet, still embracing Wilson with 2 arms, she did the same to me. First with one of her arms on my right arm, and then 2 arms on my left. Her wet grip on my skin felt gentle and familiar, the pull of her suckers, tender as a kiss. To me, the kinship with all life that Boone and Montgomery found is the awareness that animals are imbued with the same spirit and consciousness as humans. Let that sink in. Animals are imbued with the very same spirit and consciousness as humans. From this awareness rises the belief that it is possible to have deep spiritual connections with animals, and all creation for that matter. According to Reverend Dr. Marilyn Leo, a leading historian on Ernest Holmes and the New Thought movement, I believe she was a neighbor of Holmes when she was a little girl. She's a lovely woman, and I was blessed to meet her. But she says even Holmes had a pet, a German shepherd named Prince. From his writings, it is clear how much Holmes loved life in all its wondrous expressions. In a speech thought to have been delivered in the 40s, Holmes said, "We believe that there is a spirit in humans. This spirit is God. The same spirit is in all people, and the spirit that is in you is the spirit that is in me. It is one spirit, just one, always one. The spirit that is in the dog is the same spirit. The life principle in the tree is the same thing. There is one spirit, but there are different manifestations of it." Now, you may be wondering what I do to walk my talk, to evidence this kinship with all animals that I so strongly believe in. There are 3 things I feel vitally important to who I am as an animal chaplain. As most of you probably know, I'm a vegan. I never eat animal flesh, including cows, pigs, birds, and fish. I do not consume milk or cheese from animals, eggs, or white sugar in my home. I do not buy leather, fur, wool, or silk. Interestingly, 3 years before I became vegan, there was a post that came up to remind me that I had said on Facebook, with a picture of a steak cooked to perfection by my husband, that I would never be vegetarian. Well, little did I know what Spirit had in for me and my diet. I do occasionally eat cheese and eggs when I'm out, but I do the best I can. I have chosen this path both for the animals and the environment. Factory farmed animals are treated horribly. As Sir Paul McCartney has said, and he's a vegetarian himself, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian. As for the environment, cattle raised for food are the #1 source of methane emissions in the US. Methane, of course, is one of the gases that causes the greenhouse effect. But you won't find me judging people on the basis of what they eat. I don't get to feel superior for what I don't eat or look down on people for what they do eat. Yes, of course, I wish everyone would be at least vegetarian, but everyone's on their own path, and it's not for me to judge. People will only stick to a decision that they make on their own about their diets, and berating them won't do it. I prefer to educate to berate. The second thing that defines me as an animal chaplain is that I'm a strong opponent of speciesism. Speciesism, in case you don't know, has been defined as a prejudice or attitude of bias in favor of the interests of members of one's own species and against those of members of other species. I came to realize that how we view animals is largely based on how and what we've been taught, sometimes in a large part due to religious and cultural views. Some Koreans and Chinese eat dog meat, and sometimes even cat meat. I'm sure that most of us here would find that disgusting. Yet Americans eat cows, and Hindus consider them sacred. Americans also eat pigs, which Jews and Muslims consider unclean. And many people eat goat. I am sure I imagine most of you here don't do that either. Rather than picking and choosing, I just hold all animals in high esteem, recognizing them as fellow creations of the divine. The third thing I do as an animal chaplain, and realize that there's as many things to do for an animal chaplain as there are people who are animal chaplains. So not all of them do what I do. Some of them do more, some of them do less. But I fight against animal testing. I find that many people are not aware that vivisection, the scientific term for the practice, is still legal in this country, and it is even used in the cosmetics industry. Here's the main problem with animal testing. Animals are not human. Yes, like us, some are mammals, but their physiology is different enough that testing on them can cause both false positives and false negatives. Take penicillin, for example. It was the first effective antibiotic. However, this drug that without argument has saved countless lives was initially shelved because when tested on rabbits in 1929, it was found to have no therapeutic effect, causing it to be shelved for more than a decade. On a personal note, had it not been shelved, it might have saved my paternal grandmother, who died in 1934 at the age of 46 due to peritonitis caused by a burst appendix. My father was 13. Dr. Albert Sabin, who developed the oral polio vaccine, and weren't we all glad when he did that? Hey, no more shots. Testified before Congress in 1984 that development of the vaccine was long delayed by an erroneous conception of the nature of the human disease based on misleading experiment models of the disease on monkeys. This is because monkeys contract the disease nasally, whereas humans, the disease is contracted orally through the mouth. Well, there are many more examples. The final one I'll share is one you may remember, Vioxx. After it was tested on animals, it was deemed safe and approved by the Food and Drug Administration in 1999 for treating arthritis and acute pain. Almost immediately, research began to show an increased risk of heart attack and stroke for those who took it. Merck, the manufacturer, downplayed the human data because tests done on beagles and monkeys did not show cardiovascular risk. Eventually, in 2004, It was taken off the market, but not before it had caused heart attacks and serious cardiovascular disease in more than 140,000 people. Fortunately, scientists are proving that animal testing isn't needed. They're coming up with better ways to test medicines and products than using animals. These alternatives to animal testing include sophisticated tests using animal cells and tissues, also known as in vitro methods, advanced computer modeling techniques, often referred to as silico models, and even what they call organs on a chip and studies with human volunteers. I urge you to check the packaging on products you buy to make sure that they are cruelty-free. And I have some flyers at the back with more information. This side shows brands that do not test on animals. And unfortunately, you'll probably find a lot of the products you use are here. But worse, they will be here on companies that do test. So both sides of that flyer back there. And there are other flyers on animal testing and cruelty. So if you'd like an individual blessing for your pet when I finish my talk, I'll be happy to do that. But in the meantime, for those online, I'm going to do a virtual blessing. Let's take a breath, closing our eyes or finding a gaze point in front of you. Taking another breath, releasing everything and anything that concerns you in this moment. Taking another breath, drop any and all worries you may have about tomorrow or yesterday. Don't worry, you can pick them up when this is over. Let's just be in this very moment now. Knowing that the entity we call by many names, including God, Goddess, Father, Mother, Energy, the universe, Spirit, Source, the One, is all there is. It is the creator of all that is seen and unseen, is what created this day, each of us, and all the wonderful animals we love. The sky above us, the earth below us, and the universe around us. Whether we recognize it or not, we are all here by divine appointment, by invitation by the same Spirit that blesses us with abundance in all its forms, including health, well-being, and love. It gives us patience for ourselves, each other, and our animals. It gives us peace that passes all human understanding, that we cultivate within ourselves and share with others. It gives us joy, unspeakable joy, and makes light our work in this life. I recognize that I am one with this giver of all the good that I can imagine and more. I know this because I experience abundance, love, patience, peace, and joy. And what I know is that what is true for me is true for everyone. I bless everyone here and all their animals, the dogs, the cats, the birds, the horses, the turtles, the lizards, the fish, and any other animals that are held dear by those in person and virtually today. These animals are both blessed and a blessing. I know, sense, and feel that these animals will live out their lives in peace and contentment with all their needs met, knowing they are loved and appreciated for who they are. I give great, great high thanks for knowing this truth about these animals, and I release my word into the action of the law, knowing it cannot be returned to me void. And I invite you to join me in saying, and so it is. So I'm going to close with a poem from Let's Dance by Jeanne Harkin. She's an ecstatic poet, has been compared to Rumi, so you might want to check her out. You can get her books on Amazon, Jeanne Harkin. And this is Harkin. Yeah, Harkin, I think. Yep. This is a world that includes frogs. I'm so honored to be part of a world that includes frogs croaking like maniacs from a nearby pond for who knows what reason, though it seems for the same impulse in my chest that leads me to pray. I'm so honored and dazzled to be part of a universe that includes moons at all. And who can say anything without first being incinerated by awe about the great burn pile in the sky, the sun, that provides its own fuel and brings everything to life with light. I'm so grateful to be part of a world that includes the reverence of nighttime and oceans with unplungeable depths and hearts yet deeper. I'm tickled to be part of a world that I'm certain is spun of living poetry and to be sewn of the same magic fabric. I'm beyond wonderment to stand still with this particular twilight while the stars appear one by one like fireflies turning on their lights. And know that anywhere I point, my heart's gaze in this marvelous world holds a full cup of secret delight that makes all seeking replete with arrival. And as my knowing lays itself at the feet of amazement, what else can I do but join those frogs in their great burbling chorus of praise? And so it is.